Welcome to the Financial Coaches Podcast, where we talk about how to build your practice from startup to scale up while being the kind of coach your clients crave. Finally, a podcast for financial coaches. Here are your hosts, Maria Casillas and Cody Sizemore.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Financial Coaches Podcast. My name is Cody Sizemore, and I'm joined here by my lovely co-host, Maria Casillas. I keep mixing up all my words. That's crazy. I'm like stumbling and fumbling and everything. I'm going to get it here.
I can be Korea Macias today. It's all right.
Korea Macias, yeah.
Korea Macias. Yeah, it works.
Anyways, so if you haven't turned off the episode this far, or this so far yet, jeez, oh Pete's. I just want to say a few things. Number one, thanks for listening. You know, especially if you've made it past the first 30 seconds. I mean, good for you. I mean, this is awesome, right? And especially if you're, a first-time listener, we just appreciate you listening today. We got a good episode for you coming up, so it's going to be a lot of fun. And if you've been listening to this every single week, we even saw someone the other day in our Facebook group say, like, I'm obsessed with this thing, right? So for those people, we just want to say thank you. You are what we call our every weekers. And, you're the ones who really keep this show alive. So thank you for continuing to support us. If you guys want to, rate the show, review the show, share the show, all that stuff would be appreciated because we don't run ads on this. We don't make money off of this. We do this solely for a passion project. And any support would be very much appreciated. And speaking of our Facebook group too, for those of you who are like, what Facebook group? Well, let me tell you about it for a second, because we have a Facebook group. It's free to join. It's a great place to, jump into and, connect with like-minded coaches, connect with us, ask questions, give us updates, tell us what's going on in your business, whatever it might be. And it's simply called the Financial Coaches Community by New Money Habits. And the reason I bring this up is because we do a lot of events and a lot of different things to help bring value to that group, as long as you're willing to take advantage of it. For example, we do a monthly meetup. We do, this podcast. We will offer to hop on, phone calls with you if you really feel like you want to take advantage of that. But one thing that we also do is we also have a book club as well. And I bring that up because we're actually going to be talking about one of the books that is a part of the book club and kind of do a little bit of a dive into it and pick it apart a little bit. So with that being said, I'm going to turn this over to Maria, because Maria is the one who's going to be really spearheading this whole conversation around this book that I believe you guys are currently reading through. Or did you just finish it? One of the two.
We just finished it, yeah. And we don't even need to dive too deeply into it because I don't want to do what we would do in the actual book
Sure.
study. But we can certainly look at the surface. And then what I want to do here with you is figure out how can we have our listeners be able to apply some of this concept in their coaching with their clients. And I think that will bring them the value that we're looking to provide today. So the book is called Die with Zero: Getting All You Can from Your Money and Your Life. And the author is Bill Perkins. So if you guys are interested in picking that book up, you certainly can. You can listen to it on audio books. I rented mine from the audio library. So um, it is an interesting concept that I think kind of goes against the grain for a lot of people. And so I think that's why I want to talk about it today, because, you and I, Cody, we talk often about helping our clients to be more intentional with the decisions that they make around their money, whether that is the way they spend it, the way they save it, the way they invest it, the way they give it. And what this book does, it kind of flips the current way of looking at things on its head. Excuse me. And it allows the reader to kind of get through some of the old ways of thinking. And I say old, and I just mean the stuff that we're used to at this point. So let me just ask you this. I'll start with a question. When you think about our conventional advice,
Mhm.
what are we usually told by, whether it's um, our parents, whether it's society, whether it's our financial
Mhm.
advisors, what are we told by those people when it comes to how we want to use our money now and then into, I'm going to use air quotes here, retirement?
Mhm. Um, sacrifice, 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 cut back, cut back, save, 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 etc., etc., etc.
For what purpose?
For the purpose of getting out of debt, for the purpose of preparing for emergencies, for the purpose of preparing for college, for the purpose of preparing for retirement, all those things.
Okay. I want you to just dig a little bit deeper into that final one. When you say preparing for retirement, what do you mean?
So that you don't have to work forever, so that you have the ability to retire with some dignity, and so that it's, comfortable, um, and that you're able to like actually kind of enjoy those days. I think that people look at retirement as like like the holy grail kind of thing. It's like the golden days, and it's
Hmm.
what you're actually working for kind of thing.
Hmm. Okay. So, yeah, those golden years, when you say what you're actually working for, are you saying like
That's the prize.
that's the ultimate
That's the
goal?
prize.
Is
Yeah, being able not to
okay.
work and to be comfortable with it. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. And typically what age do you think people get to that spot where they no longer have to work and are comfortable with that idea of not having to work?
Usually 60 to 70.
Okay.
Mhm.
Um is that just a number we're kind of told
Yep.
or okay.
Yep. And it's
so
not even just told.
so
It's also like kind of structured that way too. Like, for example, Roth IRA, you can't access that money until you're 59 and a half.
mhm,
Social
mhm.
Security, you can't really tap into it until I think it's like 62, something like that now. Something like that, right?
Yeah, I don't even know.
Yeah. And then if you
Thank
wait
God
a
I'm a
little bit
coach, not an
longer,
advisor.
like 67 or something like that, then it gets higher, and so like it's structured that way as well.
Mhm. Yeah, you're right. We're not able to even access that saved money until a certain time at a minimum amount. The way that I asked the question was it included the idea of at what point are people comfortable with stopping working and being okay with no longer making enough? Would you say that that number is still 60 or 70 or just knowing that piece of it that there's something switches in their mind that they're actually content and they no longer need to make any more money. They're comfortable with
So
that.
I'll say it depends on a person's situation, because I've
Okay.
definitely talked to people who are in their 60s and even 70s who do not feel comfortable not working.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
assuming that they've quote unquote done all the right things, and they have their retirement
Mhm.
in a decent place to where they could do that, I would say that like once someone is pushing 60, like the 57, 58, 59, they're really starting to think about that, and they're starting to visualize it. And then maybe once they cross that 60-year-old threshold, that's when they're starting to like really have it come to fruition a little bit more, at
Mm.
least in
Okay.
my perspective.
Okay. Well, what this book does is it kind of turns some of that on its
Hmm.
head. And I think what I appreciate about it is there are so many concepts that I've seen play out, not just in my family and with clients, but just in observation a little bit more broadly. Um, and it's this idea, first of all, from that psychological standpoint of enough is never enough. so when you say, for example, that if they've, I think you used quotes, done all the right things, then they get to this point where they're like, oh, I'm comfortable. But what happens oftentimes is that doing all of those things starts to make them believe that it's never enough. So there's that piece that kind of switches a little bit, probably at a subconscious level, even as they're going through the process of that. And then when they get to the point where they quote have enough, it never feels like it's enough
Hmm.
for them. And so that happens. I've seen it happen time and again. And so, but I've never had a way to really express that or kind of put that into words. And so I think some of the concepts that are in this book, I'm like, oh, that's what I've been seeing. Oh, that's what I've observed. This is so like I never had a chance to do that. And so that's why I appreciate some of this. I'm not saying I agree with everything that's in here, but it finally put a phrase or a concept to some of the stuff that was going on in my head. So I appreciated that. I think the other thing that this does is it allows you to not just think about your money, it also has you considering your ability or your health, for example. Um, that we have this idea, and like you said, Cody, it's been structured for us. I kind of feel sometimes like we're like little rats in a lab and the maze has been put together in such a way that it guides us to do something. And that's how I kind of feel about the whole retirement thing, to be honest. It's like we've been told this is what you do, this is when you're able to access it. And so we just all like little rats and little sheep, we just do all of those things that they tell us. What this book is saying is that if you wait until you have a certain amount, for example, and then it also becomes never enough, you not only do you not take the time to quote unquote retire, but you do it at a time when you no longer have the health to enjoy those
Hmm.
things. And so this really takes that into account. And I'm going to just say, as a parent, there was another piece of that as well. And it was that whole idea of our children are only our children for a certain amount of time. And if we don't take the opportunity to do some of the things that we want to do with them at certain times, then we will have lost the not the ability, but the opportunity, I think, to do those things. So for example, if you want to watch your children go to Disneyland, there's only gonna be a certain period of time when that's gonna be ideal for them. I mean, you could wait until they're 40, but that's a little weird.
Yeah.
Like, if I'm 65 and my kid's 40, I'm like, "Hey, I've got enough money now, let's go to Disneyland." They're gonna be like, "Oh, okay, mom, like,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
not cool anymore." And so that's just a very, extreme example to show that there are things that we want to do, but if we always put them off, eventually it's gonna happen where we might have enough money, but we no longer have the ability to do that. So if you wanna travel to, somewhere that's exotic, chances are by the time you're 75, you're not going to have the physical abilities to do that as much. And so that's kind of what some of this is about. One of the things that's really interesting is it says, like, I'm giving you an impossible goal. I mean, the goal here is die with zero, right?
Hmm.
So that you have enough to live, but you basically spend it all before you die, because why do you need to leave it to everybody? Which is another thing that a lot of people struggle with. Well, I wanna leave an inheritance to my children, and one of the things that he was suggesting is leave that to your children now. Like, if you wanna give to charities, give to charity. If you wanna give to your kids, give to your kids. You let them one of the things that he said was, that if you've got, like, $50,000 that you wanna leave to your kiddo, if you wait until you die at, let's say, 80, and your child is now 50,
Hmm.
that $50,000 would have gone a lot further for them as a down payment on the first
Right.
house, for example,
Right.
rather than when they're 50 years old and chances are they've already built their lives up and they don't need that inheritance anymore. And so it's one of those things where it kind of flips on your head and it makes you think a little bit differently. So I feel like I'm rambling. I'm going to stop there. I'm going to give you a chance to just kind of chime in and tell me, what are you hearing with some of that? What has stuck out to you?
Well, I think it's all really, really good stuff. And I think that it's good in the sense that, like, there's basically two different types of extremes of people, to where, like, you on one end you have the people who are like, let's squirrel away money, and
Hmm.
prepare, and then they reach those quote unquote golden age, and retirement, and like you mentioned, like, they missed out on the stuff with the kids, they missed out on being able to travel the way that they really wanted to. They miss out on a lot. And it's all because of, them wanting to be prepared, them wanting to do the right thing. Maybe there's, perfectionism tendencies. Maybe there's scarcity tendencies that came in there. So that's definitely one extreme. And then you have the other extreme to where it's the YOLO people, to where they're like,
Mhm.
well, you only live once and, you
Mhm.
can't take it with you and like all that kinds of stuff, right? And then those people are spending everything that they have and sometimes even more. And, then they get to retirement and they're not able to retire, right?
Mhm.
So there's the two
Mhm.
extremes. And I don't think that you're saying that either one is the way to go. I think that what you're saying is like, hey, there's this place in the middle that is not balance, but I would say intentional. Like we're
Mhm.
intentional with preparing and making sure that we take care of ourselves, but we're also intentional with enjoying our lives and making sure that we're taking care of ourselves and our family as well. And having that intentionality, and again, not necessarily balance, but intentionality, I think is the sweet spot for people. And there's a lot of different approaches to take with that. Um, so, for example, I think that there's the approach of just like having, you know, monthly things that you put toward your financial goals. So, if someone's getting out of debt, then of course they're going to put, X amount towards their debt. Or if someone's trying to
Mhm.
save for retirement, then they're going to put X amount into their retirement account. And then they also have that intentional fund or intentional budget for fun money or for taking a trip or, doing those cool experiences or whatever it might be kind of thing. Um, and I think that that's a good approach. And then there's also another approach, which is kind of the approach that I'm taking in certain ways, which is that I don't want to work until I'm 60 or 65. Um, I'm 31, throwing that out there. Turning 32 in like 2 weeks, less than 2 weeks. And the concept in my head of working for as long as I've been alive, again, it it makes me feel gross. Kinda thing, you know? Like, and
Mhm.
and, I will say, like, I'm the type of person to where I'm always going to work in some way, shape, or form, but it's the
Mhm.
concept of feeling like I need to work that feels
Mhm. I'm glad
that
you
feels
made that
gross.
distinction right there.
Yes, yes.
Mhm.
So, the approach that I'm taking is like, okay, well, I want to break free from the necessity of working when I'm like 40 or 45, and then I can take those other, I can buy back those 15 to 20 years and really invest that into, my time with my family, my kids, my aging parents, stuff like that. Right. So with the approach that I'm taking is that I'm actually being very aggressive towards being able to stop working, basically 20 years early. Um,
Mhm.
while at the same time, there's those things that I know that are really, really important to me, like spending time with my family or, um, you know, sharing those experiences of, hey, let me take the family to a Detroit Tigers game, which I just did this past weekend,
Mhm.
let me take the family on a weekend trip, camping trip. Let me take the family on a RV, um, you know, uh, road trip kind of thing for a week or two, which we have planned for next year. Like those things, while they're occasional, they're also very intentional because that's what's actually important to me, and what I think is going to
Mhm.
be important for my kids as well. So aggressive in both areas, I think, is another approach to accomplish these things. And that's kind of the approach that I'm taking personally.
Okay, cool. One thing that he does mention in the book is to be able to utilize insurance in a way that makes sense.
Mhm.
So, like long-term care insurance, for
Hmm.
example, so that you're not relying entirely on your nest egg to take care of everything. That if you rely entirely on that, the idea is that you could buy yourself an extra day for like $5,000, right? So there if with that in mind, there's this suggestion that if you knew the day you were going to die, and I think this is just one of those exercises that seems a little bit morbid, but I want to bring this home for our listeners in this way, because if we can start to really have our clients think about this, it's going to change how they behave. So his thing is, if you knew that you were going to die in a week, you would do things differently for the next week. If you knew you had, 13 years, then it doesn't feel like as urgent as next week, but you would still have some idea of, oh, over the next 13 years, I want to dot, dot, dot. So since we don't really have that, none of us has the opportunity to know the luxury of, when we're actually going to be leaving this earth. He has a tool that you can actually go in and, it's just kind of like one of those actuarial tools, almost like what they use for life insurance, for example, where given, this is your sex, this is your age, this is your health status, here's an idea of when you actually might consider dying or you know what I mean?
Hmm.
And so it kind of puts things into perspective for you. And while it sounds morbid, it starts to create a level of intentionality that we could only pretend to talk about.
Hmm.
And so I don't suggest that everyone has to go and jump into this tool or whatever. I mean, you could. I don't even know what it is. I have not done that yet myself. But that's just the whole concept of helping our clients really walk through the process of thinking through, your life is not infinite. It is finite. That we don't know the day that it's going to end. But if you knew that it was going to end around this time, how would you prepare for that? And when I said earlier that he gives us an impossible goal, it truly is an impossible goal. There's no one in the world who's going to actually die with exactly zero. You can't, you can't plan. And if it is, it's a total fluke. But he says, as long as you are working towards that, then your life will be that much more intentional. And I think that's really what I want to drive home for our listeners today, is as you're working with your clients, help them to make those intentional decisions, not just based on some arbitrary, we want to have $1 million in the bank, or, by this particular day. Actually consider what are some of the things that are nuanced for them. Maybe they've got a kid who's got leukemia, and that's going to look different if they
Yep.
want to get some of the experiences and memories with that kiddo before that kiddo passes away. That's going to look different than somebody who has a long life of 100 years old. So I think that that's really what I was gleaning from that book, and just as a way to work differently with our clients.
Yeah. 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 And I'm really glad that you brought up the variables of like kid who has leukemia or whatever it might be, right? Um, because there's another thing that, I think is thrown out there quite a bit by industry professionals, and even just like the common vibe of people talking about
Hmm.
finances as well, which is that there's a one size fits all approach.
Hmm.
Like
Yeah.
everyone should do X, Y, Z, and one, two, three kind of thing. When really, maybe for you or your client in particular, their situation is actually not an XYZ. It might be an LMNOP kind of thing.
Hmm. Yep.
Um, and I think that's really important to remember, because as you start growing as a coach and you start growing your practice, you're naturally going to be in contact and working with all different types of people. And
Yeah.
you can't be that coach that just says like, well, this is what you're supposed to do, so this is what we're going to do. Like, we need to meet
Yeah.
our clients where we're at. And even if that means that maybe you would do something a little bit differently for your personal life, it doesn't matter. Like it's their life, it's their money, and you need to meet them where they're at, and then help them get to where they ultimately want to be, um, as efficiently as possible. You know?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Formulas feel
Yeah.
safe because they're measurable, they're relatively easy. But humans aren't formulaic.
Mhm.
I mean, we like formulas because of all the things I just said. But when it comes to what our goals are and our desires, I mean, we can't just, like you said, fit everybody into an algebraic formula because that's just not how we
Yeah.
are. So,
Yeah. For sure.
yeah. Well, I appreciate you letting us just kinda just scratch the surface of some of this concept. I'm sure that there were some people who were cringing a little bit when they heard some of this stuff, and that's okay. It's anything that doesn't challenge your thinking isn't really worth doing. Like, this is why we do what we do, because we wanna be able to challenge a little bit about what we've heard. So I appreciate your conversation with this,
Yeah,
Cody.
of course, of course. And thank you guys for listening again. Hopefully you got some value from today. If you did, like I said earlier, review the show, rate the show, share the show, and we hope to catch you next week as well for another episode of the Financial Coaches Podcast.